I'm looking forward to it. This Nations League finals, to me, feels like, there's a lot of potential. For Canada, they want to remain the top dogs. They had all this potential. They flamed out during the World Cup. So now they got to come back together and say, we need to reestablish who is the best in CONCACAF. We feel we're the team, but you got to prove it. For the U.S., you beat Mexico.
Especially after the World Cup,
100%.
after crashing out in 3 games, the way that they crashed out, everybody was so high on the Canada stock, and then it was a downward spiral.
They had
there was potential. There was potential, but they didn't.
No,
at the end of the day, and that's the headline.
Croatia just said, "Get out of here."
Yeah.
But then the U.S., they win the last Nations League. You need to re-win it. You need to reestablish that you're the top dogs. Mexico, they're down. Diego Coca hasn't been good, hasn't been convincing. The squad feels like it's in limbo. You don't know who you're going to build around for the future, who from the past regime is going to stick with this team into the 2026 World Cup. And then for, you kind of say Panama, they've been okay in World Cup qualifying. They've been up and down, but they've been a team that competes. Thomas Christensen, the head coach, I think has brought consistency to this Panama side. It's not so up and down. They feel like they know their identity, which has been good. So U.S.-Mexico semifinal, fire, and then Panama-Canada. I think that's going to be a better game than people are giving it credit for.
These are 4 dangerous teams in very different ways, I think. So it's going to be really, really interesting. It's also the first time that we are going to see a lineup under interim head coach B.J. Callahan. Interim.
The assistant to the
interim. Exactly. But Charlie, what are you expecting to see from him? I know you're close with him and you've spoken with him. What can we expect?
Well, BJ's obviously we had him on the show. He's straightforward. He's very transparent, clear cut. He knows how to motivate this squad. He knows them. It's not like a interim who's just coming in and doesn't know this group. He's been around this group, so he knows which buttons to push and who he needs to get the most out of. So I'm expecting Balogun to get his first start with this U.S. men's national team against Mexico. There's not a better introduction. This is the biggest rivalry in CONCACAF. Mexico desperately needs this game, and I compare it to the last Nations League final where Mexico was the heavy favorites. And this young U.S. side was coming in, eyes are big. They're hoping to kind of show that they have quality heading into World Cup qualifying. They upset the Mexican side. And that set the platform, the foundation for this young U.S. team to go into a World Cup, to qualify for a World Cup. So now this Mexican side, I feel like they don't have to qualify for a World Cup, but they have to get things straight.
Yeah, and I feel like we're overestimating Mexico just because of their form. Underestimating Mexico, correct. Because of their form, because of their new manager, because they're not getting the results that they want.
But have you seen anything that's
positive? They also don't have a solidified 11. We don't know who really is.
But they're finding it.
They're also in the middle of generations right now.
But who's from the old guard that's still there other than Ochoa?
They're missing.
Other than Ochoa, who's there?
They're missing Chucky Lozano. That's a big miss.
Yeah, but no one from the old guard is really there.
Tecatito would be in the squad if he was fit.
The transition isn't necessarily that the old guard is still there, is that no one has really solidified that that's their spot in the 11.
Yeah, but there's
still so many options.
Luis Chavez, for example, I think they're trying to build a team around him. In the back line, there are some questions. Araujo maybe could be part of the old guard, but they've given Tiba Sepulveda the nod, for example, against Cameroon. It's not been the best, and Santi Jimenez is clearly the guy that is going to start leading the line for Mexico, and Piojo Alvarado.
Is he convincing?
We'll see. These games against the U.S. is where you become the guy, and they're gonna go into that game with the hunger to prove themselves and prove, hey, like I just feel like the whole narrative. Maybe it's because we live in the United States and we're not consuming enough Mexican media, but. We're kind of like just pushing Mexico to a side, and I think that's such a dangerous thing to do.
I think it's also refreshing.
I don't think you ever push Mexico to the side. I do not.
But the narrative in the country, it's just they haven't beaten us and they're not playing well and blah 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 and all these and all this precedent that it's just like
it's the past 5 games.
It's like we're just putting them a step below us. That
you know
is dangerous.
How long have we gone where we haven't been able to do that, and now we can? Let us live a little.
The U.S. have not lost to Mexico in 5 games.
Agreed.
2 wins, 3 draws. Okay. That's 1. 2, you look at what this national team did in the World Cup. as a young group in their first ever experience at that competition, they're only getting better. Now, the argument is most of them aren't playing consistent minutes and being the star guy at their club team, which needs to get sorted. So I think a lot of guys are hoping that they have a strong Nations League so they can get a move in the summer to a club where they're going to play every single week, because that needs to happen. But this Mexican side is not convincing. If Chucky Lozano was fit and informed, that's one guy that scares you. Diego Lainez, we saw in the last Nations League final when he came in, he scares you. But he hasn't been good.
No,
he hasn't been playing in his club, and that's taken away
Yeah, but
from
Piojo
his
Alvarado
progress.
has, for example, and he's been playing well. I mean,
There's not one player in that Mexican side that scares you.
All right.
Not
Well,
one.
let's.
Santi Jimenez.
Doesn't scare me.
Luis Chavez doesn't.
Not,
no.
not one player scares me, personally.
Okay.